All right, what is going on, guys? So I wanted to make a quick video covering SpaceX. I know a lot of people are being extremely bearish on this name, and there is not a lot of bears at a level of 225, 180, as we continue to run up. But all of a sudden, there's a ton of bears as we go below this IPO price. So what I want to let everybody know, based off of the historical facts from IPOs, how they perform 1 year in, a couple days in when they, first become public, and before I actually cover the performance, let's back up and just explain the IPO process within itself if people are new. Basically, an IPO is an initial public offering, and basically it provides funding for companies, and in turn, the company actually sells a portion of that company. So, as an example, SpaceX needed funding, and they needed lots of funding. So, the best way for them to do it was to release their shares to the public market. Now, they had private rounds. We'll cover that in a later video. They have private rounds, but this SpaceX, what they decided to do was issue shares to the public where, you can have unlimited funding, typically where, you can kind of profit from your stock going higher, as your company becomes more valuable in the public markets, because you can ultimately draw off of that by an SEO. But I don't want to get caught up in explaining the whole market mechanics of that. But SpaceX did an IPO at a level of 135. A ton of people couldn't get in. It was an oversubscribed IPO, meaning shares were scarce, and basically it created a nice event, a nice pop. So from 135, this thing ran to 225, and people started to question the valuation. People started to wake up and say, "Hey, why are we buying this?" And at some point, the realism hit them, and they started to sell the stock, and now we're back at a level of 224. Now, if we look into how these IPOs trade, this is a Substack from Banyan Lane Capital, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But basically, what they're showing is that, some IPOs peak, some 21% of IPOs peak by day 3, 50% peak by day 24. But in SpaceX's situation, I believe we peaked around 2 weeks in, I believe. 612. 1 week in, basically, we peaked around 1 week in. So this is, extremely fast. So this is where we're at. We're at this rare percentile where we're at the 21%, where 21% of the companies have peaked by day 3. And we could be in a situation where we're at this percentile where we're going to fall 70% by 1 year. Now, as we know, these things are priced to find natural price discovery, because the market maker doesn't like a lot of volatility during the IPO, because essentially you get situations like this, and but regardless of that, I don't want to dive too much into market mechanics, but 74% of companies that have newly IPO fall about 30% within that year, 49% fall about 50%, and 25% fall about 70%. Now, if we were to put that in perspective, a 30% decline from 225 is 157. We've already went below that. A 50% decline from 225 will be 112. Now, we're very, very close to that 112 level, because we're just, less than $12 away, less than $10 away from that level. In a 70% decline will put us around $67. Now, I have a hunch, based on how the market works, is that we're gonna sell this thing until it gets out of the trillionaire status range for companies. Because before the private rounds, or I believe 6 months ago, this thing was valued at less than $1 trillion, and I think that's where the market is gonna go with this name. And if that's the case, if we go less than $1 trillion, that'll put the stock at around $76 or below. So I would expect $60 to $70. The market's probably going to overshoot. We'll probably end up at 60. But $60 to $70 will probably be my price target for Tesla by the end of the year. If not, a full year of trading, we should probably see $60 to $70, and we should start to load up once we start to see a nice decline lower. But regardless of that, we're going to see a nice report come out on August 6th. Like I said, those analysts, when they come in, they purposely underestimate the company. They give them a softball target for them to beat, and the stock's going to pop. But ultimately, since there is a huge short position in this name, we should see a nice pop. But ultimately, it's going to actually end up fading away where we could, see a nice break lower. So we could see below $100 very soon, which I believe. And since with this being a volatile name, we could get to $60 very soon in this name because we're already, 49, 40 to whatever percent from the highs. So we could get there extremely fast because a lot of people want in on this name, but they don't want to pay these prices. So we're going to see a lot of selling coming in. And I'm not sure if it's going to come in from the insiders or if we're just going to have a slow bleed lower from just the amount of short positions just being in on the name, because typically that's how the market works. If you have a huge short position on stocks like this or a huge short position on any stock, it'll basically sideways trade, but ultimately the trend will be lower, right? Because you have a lot of buyers trying to fight that trend, but ultimately that the more shorts that are being put on the stock, it adds more pressure. So it's actually just going to push all those buys, and we're going to, because basically, I mean, what you're seeing here, without being too overly complicated, you're seeing a fight between buyers and sellers. Ultimately, the sellers are continuing to win because they have such a higher short position in on this, and they're not selling just yet. And I believe they're going to drag this thing down to $60 to $70, and that's going to get it out of the $1 trillion range, which a lot of people are actually going to start to buy. Now, also, what I want you guys to be aware of is the market environment. The market environment is not great right now for IPOs, and you might see IPOs actually pull back more because of a reaction like this. I believe Skynex, or whatever how you pronounce it, that company went public, is going to suffer the same fate as SpaceX is going to drastically just come back down. But when how we know we're in a bear market is when you start to see the IPO market dry up, and I believe if SpaceX continues to go further, if it breaks that 112 level, we could see IPOs kind of delay their listings until next year, depending on how the market environment is, which I believe we should see a nice drawdown in the stock market as a whole, which could get us to $60, $70. Like I said, we're not going to get to that perfect level of below $1 trillion, but I'm pretty sure the market's going to overshoot it. Like it does with a lot of stocks, it's always an overshoot. It's never perfect. So we're overbought or we're oversold. In this case, we'll probably get to $60 to $50. Who knows? But I'm pretty sure we're going to overshoot that target of making it below $1 trillion company. And we're going to be a level of $67 minimum, probably by the end of the year. So with that being said, guys, study the charts. Look at the historical analogs to understand where IPOs, normally go 1 year after they have IPO'd. With this one week in, we're right here with this rare percentile, 20%. We could be at that rare percentile where we fall 70% because we've already reached a level of, 50% down from those all-time highs of 225. So we could be at a situation where we have 21%, where we meet the criteria for this. We'll probably also meet the criteria for this as well. So we're just using historical analogs. If anything changes, I'll make another video. But like I said, SpaceX, it's $70. Take care.